Chapter 4. Race to the Top. Chris and friends are now on spring break. Chris and Duran are at Duran's house hanging out. Friday night. So what now? Asked Duran. We wait, now that you know, Iria will try to contact you tonight, answered Chris. We also need to make sure that Anna and Brandy never find out about this, lectured Chris. I get that, but tell me more about Switchfire though, was she hot at least? Duran questioned. She's hot, alright, if I would have stayed there she might have killed me, answered Chris. Sounds dangerous, but, I promise you as your best friend, I will always have your back, Duran said as he and Chris touched fists. Thank you, and I am sorry that I got you into this, I wish I knew more, Chris said solemnly. Don't worry about it, you and I have been through so much, I'm ready and I know you are too, assured Duran. Chris nodded in agreement and got ready to sleep. Chris opened a sleeping bag and crashed on the floor, the two went to sleep. Duran, said a distant voice. Duran laughed. What is so funny? The distant voice asked. You're Iria? Duran inquired. Yes, answered Iria. You are hot, Duran said with a smirk. Iria stood there looking at Duran, seemingly ignoring his compliment. It's time you knew more, replied Iria. Well, don't forget about me, Chris said out of nowhere. Chris, how did you get here? Duran asked. You are an astral projection, informed Iria. Cool, so let's get to it, I'm ready to go to the Andiron universe, I want to see it for myself, Duran said excitedly. Unfortunately, Honorable Duran, you will not receive that ability instantly, Iria said as she stepped closer to Duran. Why not? Yelled Chris. Because my boss wanted you to see the Andiron universe for yourself, to show you that your life could be better, not to mention the reality of it, answered Iria. Okay, if you say so, Duran said as he looked at Iria. That's stupid, remarked Chris as he crossed his arms. You want to hear stupid? Iria boomed. Go for it, responded Chris. You inviting alternate Tanya to your alternates game personally, you caused a massive breach in the Andiron universe, a mess I had to personally clean up, Iria revealed. That doesn't prove anything, shocked Chris. It does, now that a breach in the Andiron universe has happened, a breach will occur in the normal universe, we know what it is, and we can't stop it, Iria boomed. Fair enough, Chris said as he calmed down. Duran, the Andiron universe is a balance between what you know in your life and what you do not, Iria lectured. Chris told me everything that he knew, get to what he doesn't know, said Duran seriously. The elemental masters are gathering, the Andiron universe is in danger with such a threat, I intend to train you too this weekend, Iria continued. You're going to train us in our sleep, joked Duran. No, answered Iria, then where? Chris asked. Japan, answered Iria. I've always wanted to go there, Chris said as he and Duran high-fived. Stop the celebration there, this is serious, and I take physical training very seriously, this won't be easy, Iria boomed. Chris and Duran stopped and quickly looked at Iria. Now that I have your attention, my boss got you 2 first-class tickets to Tokyo tomorrow afternoon, you two will meet me at the Tokyo Dome, where your first lesson will begin, said Iria as she once again disappeared in a blinding light. Chris and Duran woke up the next morning and sat there silent. How are we going to go to Japan for the weekend, without our families knowing, Duran wondered. Duran's mother entered the room. Sorry for not knocking, she said as she looked at Chris and Duran. What is it, Mom? Asked Duran. You know you should tell me when your football team takes a trip to Japan, Duran's mother answered sarcastically. Chris laughed. Either way, here are your tickets, first class, last I checked you don't play football, Chris, but there are 2 here, Duran's mother continued as she sat the tickets on Duran's nightstand. Call me when you get there, and take pictures, said Duran's mother as she walked out of the door. What the hell, Iria? Chris thought to himself. That was weird, but it answered my question, Duran said as he stood up. Duran handed Chris his ticket. Chris looked at his cell phone and found a text from his mom telling him to have fun in Japan. That's what she meant when she said that she would arrange it, Chris said as he crossed his arms. Well then, no time to waste, Duran said excitedly. Let's do it, Chris and Duran said as they touched fists. Chris and Duran got ready and soon arrived at the airport. Chris and Duran are walking toward boarding. You know, I have this funky feeling that someone we know is here, Duran said as he looked around. Don't be ridiculous, my cousin isn't even here, no one from your team is here. I'm sure that was just a ruse by Iria, Chris said as he took their seat on the plane. You're right, but my gut feels like someone close to us is here, Duran said as he shook his head. The plane took off and hours later, Chris and Duran touched down in Tokyo, Japan. That was awesome, Duran said as he smelled the air. A mysterious man appeared. Chris and Duran, your ride awaits, the man said as he pointed toward a cab. Iria, you better tell me what's going on, Chris thought to himself. The two hopped into the cab and they rode off. So where are you taking us anyway, buddy? Asked Chris. The mysterious man continued to drive as if he did not hear him. Are you hard of hearing? Yelled Duran. The mysterious man laughed. You don't even know where you are going, joked the mysterious man as he made a left at the intersection. Chris and Duran looked at each other. Look around you, you are in Japan, many people come here to find themselves, now it's your turn, your stop is here, the mysterious man said as he stopped the car. Chris and Duran got out of the cab. Badass, I thought that she was just joking when she said the Tokyo Dome, Chris said as he smirked. Screw all that, where's that hottie Iria? Duran asked as he smirked as well. Right here, Iria said as she smacked Duran in the back of the head. Could you please not do that when you don't need to? Chris asked as he put his hands in his pockets. Iria smiled. I had some business to take care of, I had to rush here, so I teleported straight here, Iria said as she continued to smile. I can't believe you had some hobo pick us up, he didn't even tell us where we were going, boomed Chris. I'm a very busy woman, Chris, you're not the only human I have to deal with, you know, Iria responded. What exactly is your job anyway? Asked Duran. I am responsible for the safety of the universe's major or minor, I'm also responsible for training fighters and reporting any disturbances to the defender or defenders of the universes, lectured Iria. I could have guessed that, Chris said sarcastically. Chris, calm down, we have business to take care of, Duran said as he looked at Chris. Business is right, we are here at the legendary Tokyo Dome to watch a professional fight. Now before you argue the meaning, Chris, these fighters could snap you in two with a thought, so pay attention, Iria lectured as she handed Chris and Duran their tickets. The trio walked inside and got some condiments and headed for their seats. Ringside seats, Chris and Duran said as they high-fived. This is your first lesson, pay close attention, I will quiz you afterwards, so be ready, Iria said as she pointed toward the ring. Two men stepped into the ring, one had on a very light green GI uniform and the other stepped in with a beer in his hand, he was wearing a t-shirt and cut-offs. What's with that guy, I hope he's fighting him, Duran said as he looked closer. Chris smirked. I like his style, can't ever pass up a party, or a drink, Chris said, calmly. Two other men stepped into the ring with serious looks on their faces, at that the first two men shook hands and got into their fighting stances. Wait, those two are a team? Duran inquired. They are, the serious-looking one is Q Hikari, and his partner Dan Lee is the one with the beer, responded Iria. Now I'm interested and I think I know what you want us to learn, Iria, Chris said as he looked closer. Q and Dan are two of the greatest fighters in the world right now, watch them closely, Iria lectured. The ring bell sounded and Dan stepped to the opposing fighter with the beer in his hand. Dan tossed his beer into the air and performed a 5-hit combo takedown. As he finished, he caught his beer and tagged in Q. That guy is fast, Chris said excitedly. I could barely keep up with that, Duran agreed. Q stood there as the opposing fighter tagged his partner in. The opposing fighter's partner rushed Q. Q ducked his punch attempt and grabbed the opposing partner's leg and took him down while he tagged Dan. Q stomped on the opposing partner's chest 3 times as Dan picked him up and slammed him by the foot twice, and then Q stomped on his chest again as he walked away. The referee stepped in and raised Q and Dan's hands in victory. That was fast, Chris said as he applauded along with the crowd. Amazing. I want to learn how to fight like that, Duran said as he stood up. Chris, Iria, and Duran promptly left the Tokyo Dome. So what was your first lesson? Iria asked. That we should drink up before we fight, answered Chris. Wrong, Iria responded. That we should always be serious during a fight, Duran said as he looked at Iria. You two need to look beyond the fight, or you will lose a lot of battles before they even start. I saw what you two saw, Iria boomed. An awkward silence came over the three of them. I have one word, teamwork. You two need training. If you guys don't work as a team, then I might as well label you two dead, and hand the universes over to Aaron right now, Iria said as she lit up a cigarette. You smoke? Not cool, Duran said as he sat next to Iria. How do we do that? Asked Chris. Iria laughed. Do what? Iria responded. Work as a team. Show me, and Duran, Chris replied. It's about time. Do I always have to go to extremes to get your attention? Iria said as she put her cigarette out. Not anymore, answered Chris. Let's get to this training, Duran chimed in. Before we move on any further, I don't smoke. I was brief with my description of my abilities and what I can do, Iria replied. How so? Chris asked. I can teleport, you two know that, but I was blessed by Lord Darren with the power of illusion, answered Iria. So that means you can make us see whatever you want? Duran questioned. Exactly, I don't do it to mess with you, there is a big picture and I'm just trying to get you to see it, Iria answered as she smiled. Chris and Duran nodded. Your first test is a race to the top of Mount Fuji. Many warriors past and present have found themselves while climbing Mount Fuji. Chris and Duran, it's your turn, Iria said as she stood in front of them. Really, Iria? Is this going to be the real thing or an illusion? Asked Chris. Calm down, you two should have a nice night out on the town. I have arranged reservations for you at the Shibuya Excel Hotel Tokyo. I will see you guys tomorrow morning, Iria said as she disappeared. In front of the Shibuya Excel Hotel Tokyo. I've got to say, Chris, this is a good deal. This is one of the most famous hotels in the world, Duran said as he looked at the travel guide. This is too good of a deal. Now I'm starting to feel like Iria is keeping something from us, Chris said as he used the key card on their room door. Chris and Duran looked around the room. This is a villa. This suite is probably like $6,000 a night. Something's definitely up, Duran said as he continued to look around. Let me see that, Chris said as he took the travel guide out of Duran's hand. Chris looked at it briefly and smiled. I've seen that smile before, just come out with it, urged Duran as he sat on the nearby love seat. Club Woom. We have to go there, Chris said as he sat down as well. Chris, we are not even 18, how the hell do we even get in there? Asked Duran. Iria told us to have a nice night out, she didn't say what we should do, Chris reminded. I can already tell this will start at Club Woom and end at a Love Hotel, but I'm with you, said Duran. Be ready in 30, Chris said as he ran toward a room in the villa. Chris and Duran got ready and soon left the villa. It says here that we have to go to the Shibuya terminal and take the subway there, Chris said as they crossed the street. You have lost it, that place is one of the most dangerous places in Tokyo, replied Duran. And it's also one of the most famous and legendary in Tokyo, which means we should go there, Chris quickly responded. Alright, then lead the way, suggested Duran. Chris and Duran turned the corner and arrived at the legendary Shibuya terminal. No way, this place is a bus station, Chris said as he gulped down 2 cups of sake. I agree, even though you probably shouldn't be drinking right now, remarked Duran. Chris and Duran boarded the train and soon got off. It should be across the street, the Love Hotels are about a block away, Chris said as they walked out of the satellite station. Chris and Duran were amazed as they walked deep into the Shibuya district. Duran laughed. Chris, you are drunk, but this place is amazing, Duran said as he caught Chris stumbling into the street. Look at that line, this club has to be off the hook, said Chris as he pointed. Chris and Duran walked up to the line and began to wait. Come on, Chris yelled. A bouncer walked up to Chris. Is there a problem, sir? The bouncer asked. No problem, sir, Duran said as he tried to stop Chris from saying something. There is a problem, I mean look at this line, Chris boomed. You know the rules, buddy, unless you are VIP, you have to wait in line, just like everyone else, the bouncer responded. Chris laughed. What if I told you that we are VIPs? Chris asked as he stumbled. Well, let's check the list. What's your name? The bouncer asked. You don't know my name? It's Chris Wilson, Chris said as he stepped out of the line. The bouncer looked at the papers on the clipboard. Even though you're a drunk asshole, your name is on the list. This way, Mr. Wilson, the bouncer said as he motioned. Chris and Duran walked into Club Womb. Chris, you are truly a character. You got us in here with no problem. How did we get on the list for VIP? They didn't even card us, Duran said as he looked around. Iria is watching us right now. She knows we are here, Chris said as he found a table and quickly ordered drinks. Club Womb was a true spectacle, with 4 floors and the 3 others looking down on the first, 4 DJ booths, a giant disco ball hanging from the ceiling, and an open bar on every floor. Loud trance music was playing as Chris and Duran made their way to the second floor. So Chris, what do you think Iria has in store for us? Asked Duran. Chris wasn't paying attention because he was talking to a young woman at the bar. So you come here often? Chris asked. The young woman looked at him and smiled. Actually, I do, but I've never seen you here before. But you're cute though, the young woman answered. Now we're talking, partner, Chris said as he motioned. The bartender approached Chris as he put his arm around the young woman who introduced herself as Keiko. 8 shots of Jack, please, Chris said as he showed the bartender his VIP bracelet. Chris, are you crazy? You've been drinking all night. We have things to do tomorrow, lectured Duran. I'm here to have a good time, and so is Keiko here. Just loosen up, let's have a good time, Chris said as he took a shot and kissed Keiko. Chris and Keiko went down to the first floor and began to dance the night away. Duran began to find his way around and picked up a lady friend as well. Chris and Duran met on the dance floor and pounded fists and began to dance around the floor. Last call came. Chris and Duran prepared to exit the club. Outside of Club Womb, I'm surprised you're still standing, Duran said as he and Chris walked across the street. Of course I'm still standing, I'm no lightweight, Chris responded. Chris and Duran boarded the train back to the Shibuya terminal and soon arrived there. This place is a zoo now, Chris said as he smirked. Yeah, we should get out of here before something happens. We stand out big time, Duran lectured. As soon as Duran finished his statement, he spotted a man mugging an elderly woman. Hey you! Chris yelled. The man turned around. What the hell are you doing? Yelled Duran. If you want to rob someone, come rob us, said Chris. Alright boys, the training starts early. This guy is going to attack you. Do everything I say, Iria said as she came into Chris and Duran's mind. The man charged. Chris. Step to the side and use both of your legs to do a drop toe hold, Iria ordered. Chris stepped to the side and tripped the man with a drop toe hold. Duran picked the man up and put him in a full Nelson. Go for his knee, Iria said. Chris kicked the man's knee and Duran body slammed the man. Chris stomped on the man's throat. Now that's what I'm talking about, Chris said as he high-fived Duran. You happy now? Let's get out of here before someone comes, ordered Duran as he began walking. Chris followed behind him and they returned to their villa in the hotel. The two immediately went to sleep and the next day quickly came. Chris, yelled Duran. Chris woke up to Duran shaking him. How did you? Chris started. He quickly spotted Iria who teleported to the foot of Chris's bed. Good morning, Chris, you ready? Iria asked as she smiled. It's 6:30 in the morning. The only thing I'm ready for is a shower and some breakfast, Chris said as he held his head. Come on, we're about to go to Mount Fuji. Iria says she has a surprise for us, Duran said as he helped Chris up. Chris put on his shorts and t-shirt and soon met up with Iria and Duran, who were eating breakfast. Alright, let's go, grab my hands guys, Iria ordered. Iria, Chris, and Duran disappeared. A flash of light appeared as Chris, Duran, and Iria appeared at the base of Mount Fuji. This is badass, Duran said as he smirked. Anna? Asked Chris. Brandy? Duran asked in disbelief. We are here too, you know, Tanya said as she, Angela, Daniel, and Gabriel stepped out to be seen. How in the hell did you all get here? Asked Chris. Gabriel laughed. That's funny, because we all talked about it, and that was what we were going to ask you, Gabriel said as he continued to laugh. So now that we are all here, might as well tell you why we are here, Tanya said as she looked at Chris. 1 week ago. This is an all-time low for you, you've been following me all day. How many times do I have to strike you out of my life, yelled Tanya. Chris stood there silent. Nothing to say, that's new, Tanya said sarcastically. Tanya grabbed Chris's arm. Chris shook Tanya's grasp and walked away. Chris, yelled Anna. Duran ran after him. Come on, let's go after them, Tanya said as she slowly began to walk after Chris and Duran. Anna, Brandy, and Gabriel followed. Chris and Duran's conversation is going on indistinct. What are they saying? Whispered Brandy. Something about walking away from me again, Tanya whispered. Chris and Duran's conversation continues indistinctly. What the hell kind of drugs is he on? Whispered Tanya. Tanya continued to listen. He said something about an andiron universe, and that they will tell you anyway, Tanya whispered as she motioned for them to follow her. Present day. And they did tell us, and that's how we ended up in fucking Japan, in front of this mountain, yelled Tanya. Alright, enough guys, I didn't bring you all here to argue with each other, I brought you here, because all of you know of the andiron universe. This is not an arena for your high school drama, so leave that behind and let's go, your physical training starts now, ordered Iria. Silence came upon the group of 8. First of all, I want you all to separate, Iria said as she stared at all of them. What the hell is that going to prove? Asked Gabriel. Iria flashed him a dirty look. It's going to prove which one of you 8 has the highest spiritual awareness, answered Iria. What's that? Anna asked. Your ability to problem solve and react no matter what your surroundings. This will help determine which element that myself and Darren will teach to you, Iria responded. Iria motioned for them to follow her. You will race each other to the top of Mount Fuji. Whichever one of you meets me first at the top will be the person with the highest spiritual awareness. I will be in your mind as you go up. I have a series of training challenges. Be ready. Iria lectured. You all ready? Yelled Iria. Chris, Anna, Brandy, Duran, Tanya, Angela, Daniel, and Gabriel nodded. Race to the top, boomed Iria. They all began to run. Gabriel, you coming with me? Asked Tanya. You heard her, she told us to separate, I'm going to get to the top before Chris does, yelled Gabriel as he ran onto a faraway path. 1 hour later. Alright Brandy, there is a puzzle ahead, Iria said in Brandy's mind. Brandy walked up to a sign, it says fight or flight, Brandy said. She looked around. The path forward is blocked, Brandy exclaimed. Quite a problem, so pick one, fight or flight. Iria ordered. Fight, Brandy responded. An orange flash of light appeared. This is a flame apparition, he can generate flames, around and outside of its body, Iria said. The flame apparition shot a flame at Brandy. When it rushes you, sweep it off of its feet and quickly stomp the wrists. Its hands are the source of it generating flames, lectured Iria. Brandy waited for the fire apparition to rush her. She got into a fighting stance and swept the fire apparition off its feet. Before it could react, Brandy stomped on its wrists. The flame apparition disappears. Good job, Brandy, you need to remember, at your size you have to take your opponents off their feet, and take the advantage. You passed your first challenge, Iria said. A path opened up. With Brandy conquering her first challenge, the others continue going up Mount Fuji. Iria also trains the others in a series of challenges. Iria soon placed herself at the top of Mount Fuji, awaiting the arrival of the original 8. As Iria stared into the horizon, a figure appeared. The figure was Anna, who slowly walked up to Iria. Congratulations, Anna, you are the first to the top, you have the highest spiritual awareness, Iria said as she gave Anna a bottle of water. Thank you, Iria, I learned a lot during this training regiment, I'm ready for what is next, Anna said as she sat down. 5 minutes later. Anna, you made it, where is everyone else? Asked Duran. She was the first one to the top, that makes you second, all in all not a small feat, Iria said as she continued to look into the horizon. Soon after this, Tanya arrived with Chris just a minute behind her. Tanya laughed. Anna and I got up here before you, Chris, I've got to say you have good taste, Tanya said sarcastically. Chris stared at Tanya and walked over to Anna and hugged her. I already told you, Tanya, This is not about you anymore, so keep your useless opinions to yourself, Chris said in a serious tone. At that moment, Gabriel showed up with Brandy, ironically, just steps behind him, and the others continued to wait. About an hour later, Daniel and Angela arrived at the same time. Okay guys, as you know, Anna made it to the top first. She made it first because of her high spiritual awareness and her problem-solving skills, Iria lectured. So what now? Asked Gabriel. Could you let her get to it? She's the teacher, not you, Gabriel boomed Chris. We wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for you, Chris. This is all your fault, yelled Tanya. If you want to play the blame game, Tanya, this is your fault too, because you chose to follow them and listen to their conversation, and then you told Daniel, Anna shot back. This is stupid. We have more work to do, and none of us is going to get out of this. Iria, if you would please, Brandy said as she intervened. Thank you, Brandy. Your next ordeal will be a trip to the newly created Drasil Universe. You will learn the elements and prove to me how much you all learned on Mount Fuji, lectured Iria. For the next week, Iria continues to physically train them. With the race to the top of Mount Fuji over, the original 8 face a new challenge, coupled with a new universe. The genesis of chaotic universe has been told, and the original 8 have been introduced into the universal struggle. What awaits them is a mystery, and only time will tell. End of Chapter 4. End of the Genesis Saga.